I also think that it's really important to have a very deep understanding of your big why. And this is like, this is kind of coachy language, but the question is like, why do you do what you do? I think a lot of people get bogged down in thinking that social media is like the only way to grow their career. I think social media plays an important role, but is certainly not the primary role.
Welcome, I'm Daniel Nistico from the Creative Guitarist podcast, where we explore composing, improvising, arranging, and career tips for our new generation of guitar players and musicians. I'm here with Sara Campbell, a business strategist and mindset coach. Sara runs the Savvy Music Studio, which has served hundreds of musicians and music educators in increasing revenue, expanding student numbers, improving procedures, optimizing websites, and elevating their marketing and promotion strategies. That's music to my ears, really, when I read those things. I've been watching Sara's weekly live streams, which offer a level of detail, value, and scope that are unparalleled, in my opinion, by any other music business coach that I've seen out there. For example, I watched a recent video on planning summer camps and workshops and learned things about early bird offers, networking with local businesses, communicating with your clients to find their needs, and documenting your events as much as possible. This valuable info was all just from one short video, and Sara regularly shares golden tips that are easy to implement and take action on. After all the study that I've done on business and marketing, I have no doubt that if you apply Sara's tips, you will see great results in your music business. It's my great pleasure to welcome Sara. Hello, Sara.
Uh, Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this chat.
Oh, me too. No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining me here. So, we have some great questions to cover. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. But maybe before we do that, could you please tell our listeners a bit about yourself and how you came to start the Savvy Music Studio?
Absolutely. It's been a long and strange road, so I'll try to keep it kind of succinct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been teaching privately for a long time, kind of straight out of college. I had a lot of different roads that I took, including getting master's degrees and trying the adjunct thing and all of that. And eventually, as I settled into owning my own studio, I fell into the world of blogging. And this was back kind of towards the end of the heyday of blogging. I started in 2012, which is a little late to the game. But I had a really fun time, and I would blog about everything, teaching resources, my experiences in the studio, and then I started kind of talking about marketing because it was something that I thought, nobody's talking about this. Like, let's talk about how do we sell our camps? How do we attract more students? And all of that led to some really great opportunities where I got to network with other bloggers and podcasters. And eventually, over the years, I became a teaching and business resource creator because I love making stuff. I love putting together, resources that people can follow step by step. So I worked for numerous businesses doing that. And then in 2017, um, I got serious about coaching because I used to get all these emails asking very specific questions, and that's when I started getting coaching, and then I started coaching myself. And then Savvy Music Studio was born in officially in 2020, which was an interesting year to launch a new business. But here we go. That's how I got here.
All right. Now you launched in 2020. Ah, fascinating. Okay, so all that experience shows, the proof's in the pudding, as they say. When you work with clients, you get questions, you answer questions, you've been writing blogs, and so I think that explains where those golden tips that you share. I think that it comes from that experience. So that's wonderful. So yeah, let's get into some questions here. So, what does it take for someone in 2024 who is very skilled at an instrument, for example, has a degree in music performance, like myself, to develop a career or successful living in music?
Well, I can also speak from the standpoint of someone who has a degree in music performance. Um, you know, I think you can kind of sum it up in three words. You got to have gumption, you got to have courage, and you got to have ambition. And I think combined with those, you need a business acumen, like because you're going to be making a lot of decisions and a lot of judgments. And without all of those things combined, you know, it can feel really daunting to start a career, especially for those of you who are listening who have been through what Daniel and I went through, right? Going through undergrad, getting the degree, and you get out of there and you go, well, now what do I do with this?
Mm.
Um, I also think that it's really important to have a very deep understanding of your big why. And this is like, this is kind of coachy language, but the question is like, why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
You can think of completing this sentence like, I teach so that I can, or I perform so that I can. And oftentimes when I ask people those questions, it will be things like, I teach so that I can help raise this new generation of musicians, or I teach because I know that music brings joy to people's lives. Like I perform because I love seeing the smiles in the audiences. But there's an important and often missing part of that statement, and it's this: I run a business to make money so that I can, and then like insert however you want to live your life. I think we miss out on that a lot.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. Yeah, yeah, and that's I think that in my journey, that's kind of what happened. I was doing things that I was told or I just knew to be the only things to do, right? When you go to university or college, there are certain things, like getting a teaching job, doing competitions, things like that. And I just after a while just realized this is not really working. There's so much competition. It's not really that's not my why. I mean, maybe for some people that's what they want to do, but I think it's kind of just thrust on us like this is what you must do. But developing that kind of, you said, business acumen, that was I think, and realizing that we are running a business, I think is really helpful. And that's where your resources are just, so helpful for that. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And I'll add one more thing
Mm.
here. As someone who came out with a music degree, I didn't naturally fall into teaching. I dabbled in it, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't until I had this one opportunity come to me where a local teacher was going through some very serious health issues, and they needed somebody to take over their business for 3 months, while they were going through some treatments. And so seeing the way that particular teacher ran his business as a business was like really eye-opening to me. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. So on to the next question. What are some of the most common mistakes you see musicians make when starting and running their career?
Okay, so I see these mistakes and I've lived these mistakes. So let's talk about them. So hopefully you don't have to repeat them. I think one of the biggest mistakes is not spending enough time crunching the numbers when you're establishing pricing. Um, because the money that you make at a gig or the money that you make teaching isn't 100% your salary. It's so different than showing up at a job and getting a paycheck, and whatever is listed on that paycheck, that's your take home. All the other stuff has already been taken care of, and all the things that have been taken out by the state, the country, whatever. But what you are getting, that's not 100% salary. And I think that we forget to really sit down and figure out, what do I actually need to make? And what do I need to save? It's easier when it comes to those who might be listening who might sell products. It's easier to understand the numbers with products because there's a clear amount of overhead. So if you're selling LPs, you're going to know how much you're going to make and take home out of each one of those because of the cost that's involved in making it, the cost that's involved in, shipping it and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's harder to figure out that that number when it comes to providing a service, which so many musicians do.
I see. Yeah, so that's also I can definitely speak from my own experience, and so the mistake people would make is maybe if you disregard that, if you're not thinking about that, what would happen? What's the consequence of that?
Oh, wow. Well, it might not appear immediately, especially those of, who are kind of starting out new. But I think some of the symptoms that we see from that is living quote unquote paycheck to paycheck. Being at a point where if you had to cancel a gig or if you had to like not teach for a week or a month, getting to a point where very quickly you're not financially able to support yourself. And then the other things that kind of, tie into that is, learning how to pay taxes. It's a pain in the butt, but we all got to do it. And learning how to save for retirement because I can't tell you how many times my heart has broken when I'm working with someone who's maybe in their late 50s, even into mid 60s, and they haven't, there's no retirement plan. And they just figure that they're going to teach until they die. And I don't think that, I don't want people to have to do that. Teach because you love it, right? Teach because you love it, or perform because you love it. But we need to be able to live a life and have a retirement plan in place.
Oh, that's awesome to think of that big picture, that long picture at the end, you know. Yeah, I think it is easy to get kind of in a hustle mentality, like, oh, I just got to teach or pick up this gig, or and not really, forecast much into the future. So that's, I think, fantastic advice. Yeah. Okay. Our next question goes a bit more into income. So, is it recommended that musicians have multiple income streams? And if so, how can we balance our work schedule to accommodate that?
Okay, I can say 100% yes. Definitely. I'm all about we in this one group that I'm a part of, we call it the multi-hyphenate life. So many musicians and artists out there. We are talented in multiple ways, and it might be something that's outside of music. And what's interesting about this is that sometimes there's this bizarre level of shame associated with having an income stream that is not related to business. But I just want to say, like, hey, go for it. If you also enjoy graphic design or you enjoy running social media accounts, or if you have a side gig that's a cupcake business in your house, like whatever it is, if it makes you happy and you enjoy doing that, I do think it's really important for musicians to diversify their income streams because it kind of ties back to what we said earlier. Like if you get sick, you can't perform. And you have to have a way to continue making income. So straight up, I have four income streams that all tie together in some way or another. And yeah, it means a lot of juggling and a lot of hat switching. Um, but I'm passionate about all of them. So I think it's important to diversify.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, and I like what you said about like thinking about what you might have some natural talent in other areas, like cooking or finances or organization or something like that where it might be related. You could still relate it to your music business at times too. Like for me, for example, I've gotten really into cameras and videography and that kind of thing. And before that, I was just using an iPad and sort of just it was pretty embarrassing. What I used to do with videos, and after learning about videography, I think it's really helped me to. It's such an important tool these days for being a musician. So you can use those tools, I think, sometimes to your advantage as a musician as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. And to speak to what you asked about, like the second part of that was like, how do we balance that?
Mm.
That can be really tricky. And I have on multiple occasions danced with burnout in trying to I don't and balance is kind of a lie, but trying to balance all of the different jobs that I've worked in the past. Um, and especially this past 2 years, I think it's starting to hit. You know, I turned 40, and all of a sudden I was like, you know what? Um, I think the best thing that we can do is to really commit time to our schedule for ourselves, and that can be tricky business for musicians because I think sometimes it's scary to block off a weekend or like a weekday or whatever, because you think, well, what if a gig comes up or what if a new student wants to start? Um, but you are your most important asset. And without your mental and emotional and physical health, you can't work. So if you do want to do the multi-income stream thing, make sure that you're putting yourself first in many ways and consistently so that you can show up and do all the cool things like, videography and dog walking and cupcake making and teaching and gigging and all that stuff.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's great advice too. I think very easy these days to get distracted and stay on our emails and keep working and working and not giving time to ourselves. Resting and or exercising and looking after ourselves, doing things we enjoy. So yeah, great
Yeah.
advice. Great advice.
Yeah. Got to make time to get outside and take a walk.
All right. Well, next question. We're going to talk about the internet, being online. So, how can musicians best leverage being online to start and grow their music career?
Some price involved in that, but it can be really well worth it. Because think about, where are people going to look for musicians? Where are people going to look for teachers? Like, figure out where people are looking, and that's where you need to be findable.
Mm.
I think a lot of people get bogged down in thinking that social media is like the only way to grow their career. I think social media plays an important role, but is certainly not the primary role. It can be a great complement to it. And it can be a great place, it can be a great place to build a fun following, but it doesn't always translate into money. So do it because you like doing it. And do it, if you're going to be really active on social media, it's a great place to be discovered, and kind of build like in the marketing world, they call it know, like, trust, KLT, right? Build the KLT on those places, but do it because you enjoy doing it. Now, if you really want to leverage being online and growing your career, though, the most important step is to, I know this sounds old school, but trust me on this, start an email list. Get people on your email list and keep that email list active, because that's where you're going to start making conversions. When people have like been able to read about what you're doing, and they get that like weekly dose of, hey, what's Daniel up to? And that kind of stuff. That's when people are going to start paying attention.
Yeah, awesome advice, and I can attest to that too. I found the greatest yield, you could say, from online marketing to be from a mailing list. And
Yeah.
it's yeah, I don't think it's talked about enough. I think there is too much attention given to social media. Not that it's not important, but as you say, it's only part of the picture, and that's what kind of drew me to your content, is that you talk about so many different areas. Like you mentioned, like SEO and being on Google business profile and increasing your presence online, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like what you said, you get the most, I can't remember the word that you used, but most conversions essentially through email list. Um, Something to add to that is, I mean, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about email lists is because you don't own your social media. It doesn't belong to you. You make it, but you don't own that platform. And you have no direct way to make those connections if that platform were to go away. So it's just so important to continuously invite people to get into a space that you own, that space, you own that email list.
And um, something else I've noticed is that I think it seems that a lot of musicians maybe underestimate the value of a website, and
Mm.
And if they do have a website, putting in the effort, to make it really like a top notch kind of thing. So, can you speak about that, the importance of a website and making it a priority?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of people out there who do okay without websites, but I think to myself, like, it'd be so much cooler if you had a website where people could, you know, go listen to your music. They could go easily like find, videos that you've put up there. They could see a list of all of the events that you have coming up. Or if you're a teacher, they can get a real sense of who you are, rather than just through social media. Having that website, your website, I talked about this on a broadcast a few weeks ago. Your website's kind of like a story, and you get to create this narrative that not only tells about you, that's important, but really the narrative is speaking to the person who's looking at that website, so that they can see themselves in the music that you're creating. They can see themselves in the way that you teach, and just really gives them an opportunity to feel connected to you. And not only that, but again, it's like you own the website.
Mm.
That's your space. You have control over things like SEO, and how you choose for people to contact you, and et cetera, and the types of payment processors that you choose on there. You get to make those decisions, and that gives you more control over your business.
Awesome, awesome points. I love that story aspect you mentioned. That's something I, I need to think about and dig into a little bit myself. Okay. Well, I think we'll go on to the final question. And I
Sure.
think it's a very relevant one. I think most of us will feel this way. It's very easy to be spread thin in 2024. What activities and ventures should musicians direct their energy towards most this year?
Hmm. I like that. You know, our and I know that you get this, like, things move so fast nowadays, and it feels like the speed is like constantly picking up. I think if you want to avoid being spread too thin, you got to get picky. And there's nothing wrong with being picky. Um, Say yes to the things that really light you up. And don't be afraid to say no to other things, because there's this like shiny object syndrome that's always swirling around, and that can rob you. I mean, if you follow that, that can rob you of precious time and energy. So get picky. Don't be afraid to say no, especially if the numbers don't make sense. I mean, we've everybody knows the whole like artist saying of like artists die of exposure, right? Don't don't sign up for those things that aren't going to not only feed your soul but feed your pocket. So, crunch the numbers, figure it out if it makes sense for you, and just ask yourself, is this something that I really want to do? Or is this just something that seems cool, but really my heart's not in it?
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, that's as a teacher, I noticed that a lot of students are very easily distracted these days, and it really
Mm.
hinders their progress. And one of the things I have to just fight with is just stay focused. Just you know, narrow down what you're practicing. Narrow down the number of things. Don't try not to introduce new things. I think there's a bit of a parallel there with there's lots of shiny objects, yeah, that we
Oh,
can
100.
get distracted by. So
100%. I feel you on that as a teacher, especially I have a lot of teen students, and
mm.
they are spread so thin. They are doing so many activities, and it can be a real struggle to help them to stay focused and to find that self-motivation to stay focused too.
Well, before we wrap up, do you want to tell our listeners about some of the services you offer? I've seen you have a great website too. I recommend people just visit your website just to see just how it works. It's so colorful and interactive. You've got website audits, coaching, social media courses, things like that. Could you perhaps illustrate with some examples from your clients as well?
Sure. And first, shout out to Brian White, who designed my website. He's the one who made that. He's responsible for the dancing Sara that's on the homepage. Like I had nothing to do with that. That's pretty fun. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. We do offer quite a number of services. So because I understand that music educators and musicians, like we all come in at different levels of being able to invest. So we have things that are asynchronous, like you mentioned, like the website audit. So that is something that, if you really want to get a good pair of eyes on your website to know, is this effective? What needs, if not, what needs to be changed? And that goes also for those who might be considering working with a web designer. I do that pre-work that takes up a ton of time with web designers. So people who come to me and have either done website audits or they've done things like branding boot camp, which is a branding, it's a long branding course we run every fall. People have come to me and done that work first. When they go to a web designer, the web designers are so happy because they've done all the groundwork. All of the foundations are done. They've got copy that resonates. They know how they want their website to function so they can get straight to the design. Um, and then, of course, we also have our social media course, which is slowly but surely expanding into more of an online marketing course so that it's not solely about social media. We've got hundreds of teachers in there. They really enjoy that. And I also work one-on-one with clients, some high touch services there for the people who have big projects in mind. Just this past year, I've helped um, two K through 12 educators make the leap out of the school system and start their own businesses, which I think that for me has been one of the most rewarding things to witness, being able to be in charge of what you're doing, and to be able to work in a way that really feels authentic and good.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And do you have any? Well, you sort of mentioned some of the things you have on. You said in the fall you've got a. Is that the course there? The boot.
Yeah.
Are there any other special events or projects you have coming up?
Yeah, we try to have some fun. So we've been doing once quarterly workshops, and we have different topics for those workshops. The two most recent ones we did an annual planning workshop in January, and in the fall we did a workshop on how to leverage Instagram highlights and stories. So you can kind of, if you get on the newsletter, you'll stay up to date on as to what those quarterly workshops are. And every fall, we do, this is like my flagship course. It's called Branding Boot Camp. It's going to be called something different in the fall because we're rebranding Branding Boot Camp. And that is something that not only digs into branding very deeply, but also into marketing so that after you establish your brand, you know how to tell people about it.
Well, to finish off, if there was only one quick piece of advice you could give to a musician that is striving to create and build a career in music, what would that be?
Okay, I've got this. Listen closely. Don't be afraid to niche down. The more specific you are with the people you want to work with, the easier it becomes to market your services, your products, everything. I know it can feel scary to like niche down that audience and get real specific, but trust me, it works.
Mm. Awesome. That's great. I love the Seth Godin saying, right? Better to be a meaningful specific than a wandering generality. So that's awesome. That's a really good kind of, you know,
We, we love our Seth Godin. He's great.
yeah. Well, that's yeah, awesome piece of advice there. So and how can people connect with you? What's the best way to stay in touch with you?
Sure. So you can find me on all of the places, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Savvy Music Studio. And if you go to savvymusicstudio.com, you can get a hold of me there. I'm always happy to connect with music teachers, and so don't be afraid to drop a line and say, hey.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Thanks very much, Sarah. It's been an absolute pleasure, real learning experience for me listening to you today. And as usual, you've delivered in a relatively short amount of time so much value. So I highly recommend anyone listening who's wanting to pursue a career in music to check out Sarah's resources. So thanks very much for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.